We have our first big signing of the offseason with the Braves inking backup catcher Manny Pina in a 2-year deal. And the offseason is kickstarted for the Atlanta Braves. We'll be talking about that on today's episode of Locked On Braves, as well as what it means for the catcher position going forward and what it means for the rest of the offseason. Maybe the Braves got a little bit more money to spend than we thought. So we'll be talking about all that on today's episode. So let's get into it.
Hey, this is Stacey Gotsoulias,
DC Lundberg,
Ryan Finkelstein,
Taylor Blake Ward,
host of Locked On Yankees,
Locked On Mariners,
Locked On Mets,
Locked On Angels,
and you're listening to Locked On Braves.
Locked On Braves,
Locked On Braves,
part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, where we talk about your favorite teams every day. I'm your host, Jake Mastriani, and you can follow me on Twitter at ShortstopBall. Check out my bio there to see everywhere I am talking about the game of baseball, including the Atlanta Braves over at TomahawkTake.com. Also, make sure you follow the podcast on Twitter at LockedOn_Braves. Make sure you get that underscore in there, and make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever it is you listen to your podcast. And make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube as well. Appreciate all of you out there watching this on YouTube, getting that subscriber count up. So I appreciate that. So continue to subscribe there and watch if that's the way you choose to listen to the podcast, or just continue to listen to it wherever you normally do listen to your podcast. Appreciate all the support wherever you decide to listen to Locked On Braves. And thanks for making Locked On Braves your first listen of each and every day. We post episodes daily, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, and we are free and available on all platforms. With that out of the way, let's get into the first big signing of the offseason. Actually, before we do that, if you are watching on YouTube, you can see I've got my first piece of postseason merchandise added to the background here. I'm finally starting to get my championship series gear in, so hopefully my World Series gear will come in pretty soon as well. If you are trying to load up on some World Series gear, I voted on the all MLB team, and you get 20% off in the MLB shop. So if you haven't voted for your Braves players on all MLB team yet, make sure you go and do that. You'll get 20% off as you buy some more of that World Series merchandise. So just a little quick tip there, not an official sponsored plug, but want to make sure I gave you that bit of information in case you needed more of a reason to buy some World Series merchandise. But now let's get into why you're really here, and let's talk about the catcher position. Like I said, we're going to talk about the Manny Pina signing. We're going to talk about what that means for the catcher position going forward for the Atlanta Braves. Could that mean we see a prospect traded? What does it mean for the rest of the offseason? Does the front office potentially have more money to spend than we thought? Because this certainly was not a position that I thought was a big priority that they would spend, real money on. And they did. I mean, it makes sense. But I did not think this was something that would be a high priority for them. But we've seen Alex Anthopoulos kind of be a little bit reactionary to things that have bit him in the previous season. We saw the bullpen kind of bite him in his first year here. So he went out at that trade deadline and traded for all those bullpen arms, and then re-signed some of them, Chris Martin, others after the season, went out and got Will Smith. So we've seen him kind of be reactionary to that regard. And if there was one thing that really bit the Braves last year, it was the catcher position. I mean, once Travis went down, I mean, there was really nothing behind him, and it showed, not just offensively, but defensively as well, being able to handle that pitching staff. I mean, you saw it in the postseason. Even when d'Arnaud was struggling offensively and he turned it on in the World Series, he wasn't coming out of that lineup because of what he did behind the plate, calling a game. Those pitchers felt comfortable throwing to him. They felt comfortable with the signs he was throwing down, blocking pitches really well, not throwing out a single soul in the world, but still what else he did in calling games was, outweighed everything else that he wasn't doing. So, I mean, Travis is very important. We saw that. We saw what life was like without him. So for that reason alone, makes a lot of sense that Alex would want to go out and get a veteran to back him up. I had mentioned that maybe they'd go out and bring back somebody like Stephen Vogt to kind of be there in case Contreras isn't ready or they don't want him in that backup role. They want him to continue to get full-time reps, which again, we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But going out and getting Manny Pina, I mean, yeah, he's a little old as well. He's 34. I shouldn't say that. I'm about to turn 34 myself, but he's on up there in baseball age at least. So, I mean, you are paying a pretty good chunk of money for a veteran, but somebody you can feel comfortable with if when Travis d'Arnaud does get injured and you need somebody to step in and fill that role for him. Manny Pena is certainly somebody who can do that, somebody that's been around for a while. So let's get into the specifics of the deal. The Braves signed Manny Pena to a 2-year deal worth $8 million. He'll make $3.5 million in 2022 and $4.5 million in 2023. There is also a club option for $4 million in 2024. So this has the potential to be a 3-year deal. So worth $12 million. So, Manny Pena could be around for 3 years. I kind of doubt that. I think there will be another catcher that will be ready to take over at that point. Again, they already extended Travis d'Arnaud 2 more seasons as well through 2023. So, Travis is going to be around for a little bit. But now you pretty much have the catcher position locked up for the next 2 seasons with 2 really solid guys who you're not paying a ton for. So, a really good deal for the Braves in that regard to have two veteran catchers on the payroll and locked up for a while. And the Braves, the catcher position is something that the Braves have done a really good job with for a while now. You go back to the years of having Tyler Flowers and Kurt Suzuki, just having a really good tandem behind the plate. This is a little bit different because d'Arnaud is the guy, but still, you have 2 veterans like this that you can really lean on, and it gives you time to develop the prospects you have in your system, like William Contreras, like Shea Langoliers. But I mentioned the Travis d'Arnaud deal. I wanted to look up the specifics just to remind you the Braves extended him for 2 years and $16 million, $8 million a year for each of the next 2 seasons, and he also has a club option for 2024 with no buyout. I don't think I mentioned that with the Manny Pina contract, but the Manny Pina contract does not include a buyout as well. So that's, very good there, obviously, for the Braves, very team friendly there to not have to pay a buyout if the Braves don't want to pick up that option. So for the next 2 years, at least, you have d'Arnaud and you have Manny Pena again for about $12 million a year. I mean, that is really solid for the Braves to have 2 veteran catchers like that. You're not paying a ton for. Again, Travis d'Arnaud will be the primary catcher as long as he's healthy. Health has been a problem for him in the past. But let's dive into Manny Pena real quick. For those of you who don't know, I also covered the Brewers this past season, so very familiar with Manny Pena and what he brings to the team. But let's just go through the history real quick. Was signed by the Rangers back in 2004 or 5, I believe, as an 18-year-old, or that's when he made his debut with the Rangers at least. He made his major league debut with the Royals in 2011, and then saw some time again in 2012, and then bounced around the minor leagues between 2013 and 2015. He didn't resurface at the big league level until 2016 with the Brewers, and since coming back up in 2016, he has been a solid backup for the Brewers for the past 6 seasons. In 2017, at age 30, probably had his best season, played the most games, 107 games. The most games he's played in his career. He slashed 279, 327, 424 with the 751 OPS and 9 home runs, again, in 107 games. This past season in 2021, he set his career high in home runs with 13. What was interesting about Manny, and I just thought this because I watched a lot of Brewers games because I was covering them, it felt like every time he got a hit or every time he came up, it was a home run. Well, 13 of his 31 hits that he got in 2021 were home runs. So it was pretty much boom or bust for Manny Pena in 2021. The average certainly was not great this past season, but again, when he did get a hit, he made it count. He hit just 189 this past season with the Brewers, but had a solid 732 OPS because of those 13 home runs. Then defensively, very solid, even better than solid. Great, actually. And I saw this tweet from David O'Brien that I wanted to share. He said, looked up defensive run saves from 2021 among NL catchers. Pina was fifth with 7 defensive run saves in 452 innings. For comparison, Yadier Molina had 6 defensive run saves in 1,001 innings. And in the past 5 seasons, Pina is fourth among all MLB catchers with 38 defensive run saves and just over 2,400 innings. So again, a very good defensive catcher. That's something, I noticed a lot watching him with the Brewers. Pitchers like throwing to him. He's very solid behind the plate. He's very good at throwing out base runners, which, as we know, Travis d'Arnaud wasn't or hasn't been in his past. So again, a very solid defensive backup that has some pop. I mean, that's essentially what you're getting. Well, and you're getting a great clubhouse guy. And, maybe it's just because he had been with the Brewers for so long. The fans loved him. The guys on the team in the clubhouse loved him. So he was a very great clubhouse guy for the Brewers. I can only imagine he will be with the Braves as well. So you're getting a good clubhouse guy that players like to be around. You're getting a good, very good defensive catcher, and you're getting a catcher that has some pop that's going to run into one every now and then. So, I mean, that's basically what you want in your backup catcher, and that's what the Braves are getting, and they're getting it at a very good price. So I really do love this deal for the Atlanta Braves. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and talk about what this means for the rest of the catchers in the Braves system. BetOnline is back and better than ever. A new web interface for the start of the basketball season and more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the basketball and football action this season. Head to their new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so what does this mean for the catcher position in 2022? Let's just start with 2022. So, before this signing, I had talked about the idea of William Contreras being the backup because most likely you're going to have Shea Langoliers move up to AAA. He played pretty much all of 2021 at AA. He passed that test in my mind, and he's ready to take on AAA. So you got to imagine that's where he'll be in 2022. So there's not going to be room for William Contreras there. So I thought maybe the Braves would want to use William Contreras as the backup to Travis d'Arnaud, but that apparently is not the case. So what this means for 2022, again, Travis d'Arnaud will be the main catcher. But again, as I've said in the past, I think you're lucky if you get 110, 120 games out of Travis d'Arnaud, which means you're probably going to see a lot of Manny Pina. And I still think you're going to see a good bit of William Contreras because when Travis d'Arnaud does get hurt, it's going to be William Contreras that comes up more than likely. Unless Langoliers just continues to prove himself at AAA and they want to make that jump, it's probably going to be William Contreras that comes up. And if Contreras comes up, I think he gets the starts over Manny Pina. That's just my assumption. I don't really know how the Braves view it, or it may also depend what the rest of the lineup looks like and what they need. If they need the upside offensively, then maybe you go with Contreras. If you just want a steady defensive presence back there, then you go with Pina, but that'll kind of work itself out. It'll probably become more of like a 50-50 split at that point. But that's how I still view the catcher position playing out in 2022. Again, unless they just feel like Langoliers is ready, which I know he is defensively, but we'll see what kind of jump or how he plays out offensively at AAA Gwinnett before they make a decision on him. Certainly don't want to rush things with a catcher. Want to make sure that he is ready for that promotion whenever the time comes. So that leads to my next question. What does this mean for William Contreras and Shea Langoliers? You have two very good catching prospects. One in William, who's already made his debut. Seems like he's kind of knocking on the door a little bit. Hasn't been outstanding in his call-ups, but again, very small sample size. Hasn't really been given a great go of things. Been great in the minor leagues offensively. We know he has a lot of work to do defensively. But, what does this mean for him. And I've seen a lot of people kind of speculating maybe this means William Contreras could be a trade bait this offseason. And that's certainly a possibility. I also just think having two veteran catchers that are almost on their way out and having two really good catching prospects that are going to be ready at the same time that those two veterans are on their way out lines up very well if you wanted to keep Contreras and Langoliers and have them as your dual catchers for years to come. I think that's a very solid play as well. But obviously, if the Braves have to choose between one of them, Langoliers is going to be the option. And I don't know how they necessarily view Contreras. Clearly, they don't think he's ready even to be the backup catcher, but certainly not to be the full-time catcher, or they wouldn't have got Manny Pina. They wouldn't have extended Travis d'Arnaud if that were the case, if they thought he was ready for that. So then it comes down to, how do other teams view William Contreras? Did they view him as somebody that's ready to step in and be an everyday catcher, or can he go to a team that's kind of rebuilding that can give him that time to make the adjustment at the big league level? And, that's one of the things that the Braves just don't have the ability to do right now, is to allow young guys to figure it out. They did through the rebuild, obviously. I think that's why guys like Kyle Wright and Tuki Toussaint haven't been giving extended runs a lot of times at the big league level, because the Braves just don't have a lot of opportunities, times for young guys to figure it out. They need them to come up and produce right away because they're trying to win championships. They just won a championship. So I mean, they don't have that ability with William Contreras to just throw him the starting catching. You look at Christian Pache. I mean, they tried it with him, briefly in 2022 to hand him the center field job. Now he got injured and had setbacks, but still just really wasn't good. And they pulled the trigger on him, very quickly. But you can't do that with a catcher. I mean, the catcher is just so vital to your team, what he does behind the plate, what he does with the pitching staff. So you can't just allow him to feel things out and work his way into a starting position on a team that's ready to contend right now. So unfortunately, they just don't have that ability with. I like William Contreras. I think he can be a very good starting catcher at the big league level, but you need time to kind of figure that out, how to do that. You can do that as a backup catcher. Again, I still think if the Braves hold on to him, he'll get that opportunity this year, but you just can't really count on him, right now as a everyday starter. You need somebody that you can rely on a little bit more, and veterans like d'Arnaud and Manny Pina. So I think if the right team came along with the right package and they viewed William Contreras, as their future catcher, then I think Contreras will be dealt. If he's not, if Contreras is not the somewhat centerpiece of a pretty significant deal, then I don't really see. I wouldn't. What I'm trying to say is I wouldn't move William Contreras just for the sake of moving him, because you have Langoliers coming and you don't really have a spot for him. You can't get him enough at bats at AAA. I mean, you have the DH in the minors, so you can get both guys in there offensively. So I wouldn't move him just because of that. I would only move William Contreras if it made sense, if it was part of a bigger deal to improve, the outfield or the starting rotation. That's the only way I would move William Contreras. Otherwise, keep him. I mean, we saw last season, you can never have enough catchers. So, even though Langoliers is already crowned the future catcher for the Braves, I like the idea of having William Contreras right there, and those two can kind of become a nice 1-2 punch after Travis d'Arnaud and Manny Pina have worked their ways out. So that's how I see it. And I see this as giving Langoliers plenty of time to continue to develop at AAA next year until they feel he's ready. And then I think in 2023, we could see Langoliers start to, start to move into that role, that position, becoming the Braves' everyday catcher of the future. But then with doing this, by getting two veterans for 2 more years, you allow them that time to grow Langoliers into that position. Because like I said, it's hard to just throw a young guy up there and say, here it is, on a team that's trying to win a division, win a championship. It's just really hard to do. All right, so what does this mean for the rest of the offseason? Do the Braves have more money to spend than maybe we thought? And I did a podcast earlier this week talking about payroll. I guess it was yesterday. I don't even know what day it is right now. But I did an episode on Monday looking at the payroll for the Braves. And, assuming they sign Freddie Freeman, there's not a lot of money left there to spend, assuming that the payroll, the overall team payroll is around 160 million. Now, I said if they're willing to increase that, go up to 170, 180 million. Also, if they think they're not going to have to pay Marcelo Ozuna for 2022, which I believe they don't, but we don't know that yet, and who knows when we will, then that gives them a little bit more flexibility. To me, this signing means there's a little bit more flexibility there than maybe what we thought. Because like I said, you could have gone into 2022 with William Contreras as the backup, because I think he's going to get plenty of playing time there. Also, potentially going to have a DH next year as well. So that would give him more opportunities to get into the lineup so you can keep his bat fresh and continue to develop it. But so they didn't have to go out and get a backup catcher like this. It was probably the smart move to do, again, like I talked about. But this tells me that maybe there's a little bit more money there to spend. Not a ton. I mean, it's not like they spent a whole lot on Manny Pina. It's just $3.5 million for 2022. So it doesn't do a lot towards that overall total payroll. But I don't think you make a move like this with the hole that you have in the outfield unless you have that money to spend. So this tells me that there is money to spend there to not only get Freddie Freeman, but to also take care of their second biggest need, which is left field or center field, the outfield, get something. So I think that at least tells me there's enough money there to make the big moves and make some smaller moves, fill in the back of the bench, the back of the bullpen, maybe the back of the rotation as well. I think there's money there for those guys now. So maybe we do see the total payroll go up to 170, or maybe they are just like me and hoping they don't have to pay Marcelo Ozuna for 2022. A couple of other news items. That'll be all for the catcher talk and the payroll talk. Now move on to some other news items. The Mets tried to steal the headlines on Monday night. They finally got a GM. Somebody finally wants to take that job, and it is Billy Epler. And you may remember Billy Epler as the former GM of the Anaheim Angels, who couldn't do anything with Mike Trout, couldn't get him to the postseason, couldn't build around him. So I'm not too afraid of this move here for the Mets. So after going down a list of about 10 or 15 names, they even called me up the other day and I said no. But they finally find one in Billy Epler. So good for them. We'll see how it works out for the Mets. And then Ian Anderson finished 5th in the NL Rookie of the Year voting after finishing 7th last year. Jonathan India of the Reds won the NL Rookie of the Year award, and Randy Rosarina won it in the American League. That will do it for this episode of Locked On Braves. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Locked On Braves, and you can follow me at Shortstop Ball. Also, make sure that you follow us on YouTube as well. Hit that subscribe button, and make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast, wherever you get your podcast, and we will talk to you next time.